All right. So welcome to today's video. This is Shanmagaraj. So I'm going to continue my videos on Agile series. This might be the one of the last videos in initial Scrum videos. Right. So let's begin this video. We have already discussed Scrum values in my first Scrum overview videos, and we discussed about roles and artifacts in my last two videos. Today we're going to discuss about 5 events of Scrum, right? What are those events? Sprint itself an event as defined in Scrum Guide. There is something called sprint planning where you plan your sprint. There is something called a daily Scrum where you do the monitoring, controlling on your sprint goal. There is a sprint review where you do the demo, and there is a sprint retrospective where you do the reflection on your processes, frameworks, and many other behavioral aspects, right? But in addition to that, there is two other critical areas as a scrum master, as a project manager, as an agile leader you would like to think about it is one is release planning meeting and grooming session. These two meetings happens well ahead of your sprint, sprint planning or sprint, right? So let's touch upon this release planning and grooming session before we get into the actual scrum ceremonies. So actually agile starts with multi-level planning in reality, right? In a essential safe, if you look at essential safe, that's where minimum level of planning is happening, right? So multi levels of, you can do large solution safe is there, a portfolio safe is there, right? But in a simple a product delivery, you may start with a release plan. Typically release plan is done for 3 to 6 months, and then funnel it down into sprint plan, where typically happens every 2 to 4 weeks. For every sprint plan is happening, there is a daily plan at Scrum meetings. So this is a multi-level planning that's happening. In earlier discussion we discussed, one of the myths of agile is, agile does not have planning actually. So in reality, agile is having a very adequate planning is there. There is a product vision. The product leaders will build vision as well as the release roadmap, and then we'll start with the release plan and sprint plan, etc. Right? So this particular session, this particular slide talks about what are the outputs of each, you know, in a product funnel. Actually, I would like to call that as in different stages of product evolution, right? There is a stage at which product vision is built, right? So the output of the vision is always strategic themes and goals. It is represented, the product vision is represented in strategic themes and goals. The next level of evaluation is the roadmap, building the product roadmap. So product roadmap contains epics, mainly epics, and then you do the release planning, right? So release mainly contain number of features, which is finest of epics. Then you do the sprint planning where you build the you come down to story level, and then you do it daily. You talk about task, right? So tasks are less than 1 day of effort generally, right? So what is the frequency, who will do that, and how the evolution happens, right? So vision, if you look at that vision roadmap release, it's not part of the scrum actually, right? But it is essential to have it actually as part of agile. Even though scrum is not recommending, the good or best practices is to build product vision roadmap and release, which is happening at strategic level, right? So vision, how do you represent is vision poster or elevator statement, right? It can be a press release or one pager. Who creates it? Actually, it is done by a senior person like strategic product manager or product leader who heads the product. It done once in a year actually. Then you come down to vision is being elaborated in the product roadmap. Product roadmap contains 2 to 3 releases actually. It can be done by a senior product owner twice a year actually. So you can do the road mapping twice a year. A release plan is created quarterly. It's done by product owner. Then you come down to sprint planning where you do the sprint backlog, right? Sprint goal and sprint backlog. It's created by ownership of sprint backlog of the Scrum team, right? So it is done every 2 weeks as per the length of the sprint. On a daily basis, there is a daily sync up meeting. You use the burn down chart. It's done by the Scrum team, right? So this is how Agile is doing an adequate multi-level planning at different levels. Agile is recommending this level of planning. So it is better to in addition to 5 events what is Scrum is talking about. It is always advisable to go for release planning and road mapping and visioning statements. It's a good to have, and it's not nice to have. It's a good to have actually, right? The second event which is out of Scrum is the grooming session, right? So very important session to have it actually before the start of the sprint. We call that as a product grooming, right? Some people call that as a sprint grooming, but mostly we call that as a product grooming. So product grooming can happen, should happen periodically. It's like a well executed grooming session will help you to, will save a lot of time in your sprint planning. See what exactly happening. Another word we are using, another vocabulary we are using for grooming session is the refinement session. Actually, it's a product backlog item refinement meeting. We call that, right? What exactly happens here in the grooming sessions are building a new product backlog item, nothing but user stories or epics or whatever it is. Removing the non-relevant ones, reassessing the relative priorities of the stories or epics, assigning estimates, correcting estimates, splitting the stories. We will discuss. I'll put another video on what is in it for a product owner to use a certain format and user story, certain ways of slicing it, vertical slicing and horizontal slicing. How to? There are many strategies in splitting a stories, right? We'll talk about it. I'll take a separate, it's an advanced topic for a product agility perspective. I will do another video on that actually. So essentially, in refinement session or grooming sessions it's to explain, give the high level picture to the team. It is chaired by the product owner who helps the team to understand what's happening on a release, what's coming on upcoming sprints, and talk about his stories, talk about his epics, and try to get the estimates, high level estimates from the team, try to split it. Right? These are the things happening. You try to refine it, you try to as per a deep principle, you try to do that refinements at different levels in the grooming sessions. It's very important to have grooming sessions. So to have an effective sprint planning session, it's always advisable to go for grooming session, 1 or 2 grooming session for every sprint. It's always advisable, right? So okay, so let's get into actual sprint events, right? Actual Scrum events, Scrum ceremonies. It starts with the sprint itself a ceremony, right? This picture talks about Scrum ceremonies articulation. So what are the sprint is culmination of different Scrum ceremonies, right? So it starts with sprint planning, right? So we have the product backlog and you do the sprint planning where you get the sprint backlog, and the team is doing daily sprint, and then they finally do a product demo session, sprint review, and then do the retrospective. So this one cycle is called a sprint. So every time, every sprint, repeating the same steps. That's what we studied in the Scrum guide as well, right? The 4 steps in Scrum is very simple, right? So sprint itself an event in Scrum, right? Let's look at some of the things about the sprint. whether you can bring the changes to the sprint. Of course, yes. As per agile principles, obviously you can take changes at any point of time. That's a agile principle in which you are, starting your agile journey, right? But shorter the sprint length minimizes the impact of the change. Actually, it is always better to have 2 weeks. Actually, 90% of the teams, 90% of the companies have 2 weeks as, sprint ceremonies. Sorry, 2 weeks as sprint length. Actually, right? Standard Scrum, only Scrum team can change the sprint backlog. Scrum team consult the product owner if commitments are unachievable. Product owner removes the low priority items from the sprint backlog. This is possible. Product owner cannot introduce any stories during the sprint. Actually, it is not recommended as a standard practice, but it's okay as long as there is a business value in it. There is a negotiation happens between the product owner and the team. There is available bandwidth. That something can be moved into a stretch goal or deprioritized. You can always accommodate that. It depends on the market conditions and everything, right? So generally, we are product owner is not going to introduce after the sprint goal is finalized, but exceptional cases, it's a possibility. Teams should accept it and work on it actually, right? So common pragmatic implementation is need to allow for turnaround of new critical defects and etc. Right? So when you do a sprint, within the sprint you deliver it, right? You have some contingency space to get the bugs. Testing team parallelly create a test case, right? They will create a test case, they will testing it, right? So generally, you have to plan only 60% as a must-have item. So that's where the MVP start. That's what we discussed in the Moscow prioritization. You need to allow some turnaround time for some defects to happen and fix it. So that is the reason, right? Plan that 60% must-have item as an MVP, and then 20% should have item, another 20% for a contingency. So people should use the 20% contingency for for turnaround of new critical defects, right? This allows some scope change within the sprint, right? That some changes are coming, it will allow that. The amount of must-have effort must be agreed by Scrum team, right? So these are the the general principles in a standard Scrum, some common pragmatic things in a in a sprint. And cancellation of sprint can only done by a product owner. If requirements change too much and sprint goal no longer makes sense, you can cancel it. If the team feels that sprint goal cannot be achieved, you can cancel it. What is the next step you do after cancellation? You have to do the retrospective and you have to think about it, inspect and adopt and change, stop, replan and start another sprint. That's all. It's simple as that. So the moment you cancel the sprint, the next step you have to do is immediate step you have to do is run a retrospective. Okay, try to retrospect and try to reflect and understand what are the challenges. Try to replan it, start another sprint. Right? There is another optional approach called hardening sprint. It's an empty sprint at the end of the sprint planning meeting. Sorry, at the end of the release planning, right? So release planning, generally one release have 4 or 5 sprints actually, 4 implementation sprints and one hardening sprint actually. Hardening sprint is again a contingency sprint where it allows flexibilities for change. You can pull additional work if required. There's an additional capacity is there. You can do the additional work, but definitely it's not the place for dump the stuff which is not done in the earliest sprints. So you need to plan accordingly. Hardening sprint is just to have a flexibility. It gives the cushion and contingency to have a milestone check to complete our releases accordingly. So many it's just for contingencies and reeling the unplanned things and check. Right, so second event in the sprint is a sprint planning. So sprint planning is input is a product backlog where capacity and velocity is input, because average capacity and average velocity. So available capacity and average velocity is a very good input for sprint planning meeting. Then only team knows what can they take it. They can commit the sprint goal. Right, current product status and constraint, all these are inputs to that. So that's happened. There are 2 levels of sprint planning happening. The first meeting happening, they discuss what is going to do that, and second meeting they discuss about how they do it actually. So first meeting is chaired by product owner where he explains everything, clarifies the requirements, user stories and everything. The second meeting, the person development team will estimate and they'll discuss how to implement it, build the tasks, right? And then the output is a sprint goal and sprint backlog, right? So what is happening? There are 5 steps in happening. Come prepare with the data and estimated story points. So sprint backlog, the availability for selection is already given to the team. Team should come prepared with the estimated data. Confirm estimated story point for all the items on the backlog, right? Agree on the items to the move to the next sprint, new sprint, determining the team's capacity for the upcoming sprint, compare it with the total story point proposed, end the meeting with the Q&A to ensure that all the team members are on the same page. So these are the simple steps agenda followed in sprint planning meeting, right? So what are the different roles? What are these people going to do that? The input is, as we discussed earlier, sprint backlog, stories, team capacities, business condition, technology stability, retrospectives. All these are inputs. The Scrum Master facilitates the time box the meeting. Product owner explain the goal, vision, and backlog items. The team plan, commit to the work on the backlog items. The output is always a sprint goal and sprint backlog, right? The third event is a daily scrum meeting, right? It's a 15 minutes time box. You meet at same place, same time, facilitated by Scrum Master. Full team presence should be there. Focus on 3 questions. What are they? What did I do yesterday? What I will do today? What is in my way? So you need to understand, you need to explain to the team, everybody. It's a transparent forum that you have to explain what you did yesterday, what are expecting today, what are any dependencies with the other team members, what are any blockers you have to discuss, right? Just a 15 minutes, nothing else you can do. Other things you can discuss after this. So think of a daily scrum as a meeting where team members synchronize their work versus just a status meeting, right? So you can, right, when there is a lower maturity of agile teams, so there it may be a sounds like a status meeting, but when you got start maturing and transparency established, courage kind of values has been established, respect being done, but you see that daily stand-up meeting is more of a synchronizing the each other's work and work towards the common goal, right? The fourth event is a sprint review where the demo is happening. So meeting at the end of the sprint to check the increments. Who are there? Product owners, Scrum Master, teams, product sponsors, users, customers, other stakeholders. So your working software is your increment is the input. You can spend 2 to 4 hours of 2 to 4 weeks of a sprint. What are you going to do that? You demo the done functionalities, you try to update the product backlog, and you plan for next sprint, right? There are 8 steps involved in sprint review. This is a flow chart explaining the sprint review. You start sprint review, meeting starts, welcome the stakeholders, product owner welcomes the stakeholders that have freed up their agenda to attend the review, right? The present the review agenda. And what are the agenda? You will discuss about done products. You discuss about get the feedback, identify the changes, right? You have to redo the product backlog and reprioritize and get feedback, right? That's all it is. So present the agenda, present the done products, product owner or development team will present it, get feedback, product owner ask the stakeholders at feedback regarding he himself or herself can provide a feedback. Then you present the product backlog, right? The product owner presents the top of the product backlog to the stakeholder to get the feedback for upcoming sprints, right? You have to explain the sponsors and users and user community that these are the stories are upcoming sprints, right? So get the feedback. Product owner requests the feedback from the stakeholders regarding product backlog. See if the priorities are aligned with stakeholders, and the meeting ends. The meeting ends when it's done, right? When the time box is over. So these are the 8 steps involved in a sprint demo. The final event in a sprint is the sprint retrospective, meeting after the sprint review to review the processes. So what are the things you're going to discuss? What went well? What could be improved? How we can improve it? It could be of 30 minutes to 3 hour session where product owner and scrum team, you can involve the product owners as well, right? The self-analysis of how to work, problem analysis, and improve aspects and framework improvement. So these are the things the output is going to happen, right? These are some of the templates available, in real time. You can use start, stop, continue. You can use the 4 L's like liked, lacked, learning, and long. So there is something like good, bad, ugly, or something. You can use multiple templates for your retrospective, right? So with that, we come to a conclusion of Scrum events. So we discussed 5 events, like sprint itself an event, then sprint start with the sprint planning, then you go with the daily sprint, then you end with the sprint reviews and sprint retrospective, right? Apart from that, it always good to have a multi-level planning and release planning meeting and grooming sessions are, it's good to have. As a scrum master, you would like to, as an agile leader, you would like to emphasize on those meetings as well. Okay, so with that we are concluding this particular video. Okay, so I'll try to give more advanced videos on how to build a user story, how to do a vertical slicing, how to do, story splitting, everything in upcoming videos. Okay, so thanks for your patient listening and time. So please give your feedback and comments, and so that I would like to improve on your best and your ideas, right? So I'll keep on produce videos in agile series as well as in project management areas. Okay, so thanks for time, thanks for listening. Bye bye.